Welcome to Daily Power Parsha. Today is Friday, October 29th, 2 days before the 31st of October. Not a Jewish holiday, but nonetheless, this is a special Friday in that we are going to conclude the Torah reading of Chayei and do the Haftorah, and there's a great stories and lessons in store for us. We'll welcome Ray to the party. Ray, welcome to the Shindig that we call DPP. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Stay with me on this. Here we go. We're up to reading number 6. So what we've done so far, give me a second. What we've done so far is that we have talked about the passing of Sarah, Sarah, our matriarch. We talked about Avram buying a burial plot to bury his wife. We talk about how he laid his wife, his beloved wife, Sarah, to rest. He then proceeds to endeavor to work on helping find his son a shidduch, a match. He sends Eliezer to his old hometown to find a girl suitable. Eliezer travels miraculously, instantaneously finds the right girl, negotiates with the parents, speaks with them, gets their consent, gets her consent, brings her back to Yitzchak. They meet, they get married, and they are living happily ever after in love. Okay. Now the story picks up with Avram. Now, what does Avram do? So his son is married to Rivka, to Rebecca. So what's he doing? I'm glad you asked. Genesis chapter 25, verse number 1. Here we go. And Avram, Abraham, took another wife, and her name was Keturah. Now, here's the interesting thing. According to the commentaries, who is Keturah? We talked about Hagar or Hagar, whatever you call her, Hagar, the former maidservant of Sarah, who originally was from the royal family of Egypt. If you recall, I mentioned this a few weeks ago. Hagar was the daughter of Pharaoh. She was an Egyptian princess. When Avram and Sarah went initially, many years prior, when they went down to Egypt in times of the famine, and Sarah was abducted to Pharaoh's palace, etc., and then released. So that's when Hagar first encountered Avram and Sarah, the power couple, and she said, "That's it. I'm leaving the palace, and I'll rather be a maidservant to Avram and Sarah than be a princess in Egypt." And so it was. She has a kid. Once she has a kid with Avram, Yishmael, she gets sent away with her kid, ultimately, as we talked about. But now after Sarah passes away, Avram marries Keturah, aka Hagar. Yeah, Ray.
Well, I know we talked about it, but it says here that according to most common rabbinic chronology, the nurse was sent along because Rebecca was but 3 years old at the time, so that she would have needed someone to care for her. According to Ibn Ezra, however, there are also comments that she was older, but it was customary for the nurse of a girl to stay with the person for a lifetime.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So that harkens back to our question a few days ago, like what was the nurse about? Does that mean so that she was young? So Ray, you asked the question, I believe, and this is a very thorough answer. Some say, as I mentioned, as we talked about a few days ago, some say that she was 3. It's a bit hard to understand the narrative, but if you say that she's older, there's still an understanding that she would still have a nurse, so to speak, or some sort of assistant. They would stay with them for life. Okay, very interesting. It's like, I guess, like a nanny who grows up with the kids and, sticks with the family, that sort of thing. Okay, that makes sense. So Avram marries Keturah. I'm going to toggle Rashi. Here we go. Keturah. Why? So Rashi says this is Hagar. There you go. That's pretty straightforward. She was called, why? So why was she called Keturah? What's the deal? Why give her a new name? That's like strange. She was called Keturah because her deeds were as beautiful as incense. The word for incense is ketoret, Keturah. So she's called Keturah to show that she was righteous. Her deeds were beautiful like incense, like beautiful smelling, like beautiful incense. Okay, and a second reason why she's called Keturah is because she tied her opening. That's, of course, a euphemism, for she was not intimate with any man from the day she separated from Abraham, from Avram. So from the time that she was with Avram and had a child, she was not with any other person. So that's another reason. Keturah means katra. Katra means tied. I'm looking at the vowelization here. Katra means tied in Aramaic. Keturah, katra, so tied. So she was beautiful like Keturah, like incense, and she was she practiced morality, katra, tied, etc. Okay, so that's this idea. So she was with Avram, and then ultimately after Sarah passed away, she marries Avram. Now let's talk about their children together. And she bore to Avram, to Abraham, Zimran and Yakshan and Medan and Midyan and Yishbak and Shuach. How many kids? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 boys. Okay. And Yakshan, one of the boys, begot, these are grandkids now, Shiva and Dedan. Okay, those are grandkids. And the sons of Dedan, great-grandkids, were Ashurim, Letushim, and Leumim. Those are the great-grandkids. Ashurim, Letushim, and Leumim. And the sons of Midyan, right? Midyan we know as a nation. Remember the Jews encountered the nation of Midyan later on in history when they're approaching the land of Israel. Anyway, the sons of Midyan, the person, were Epha and Efer and Chanoich, Enoch, and Avida and Eldaah. All of these were the sons or the grandsons or the great-grandsons, basically the mishpacha, the family of Keturah, Hagar, that was born to Avram. Okay, Keturah that had children with Avram. Okay, and Avram, here we go. Here's the clarification. We spoke about this at length Wednesday night in the Torah class. Notwithstanding all of these kids and grandkids, this whole side of the mishpacha, Avram gave all that he possessed to Isaac. You see that? All that he possessed. What does it mean, all that he possessed? Let's see Rashi. Rabbi Nehemiah said, he gave him a permanent blessing. For the whole unblessed, he had said to Avram, and you shall be a blessing, i.e. the blessings are delivered into your hand to bless whomever you wish. And Avram and Abraham gave them over to Yitzchak, to Isaac. So Avram gave over his power of blessing to whom? Specifically to Yitzchak. So that's what it means. Toggle Rashi off for a second. That's what it means that Avram gave all that he possessed to Isaac, his power of blessing, which basically includes everything. Because it's like, when people ask, if a genie gave you 3 wishes, what would you ask for? I know what I would ask for. Wish number 1 is, come on guys, what's wish number 1?
Good health.
Yeah, but no, that's my wish number 2. What's my wish number 1?
Being able to retain anything you wanted.
Unlimited wishes. That's what I'm going for. There you go. Unlimited wishes. You give me 3 wishes. My first wish is unlimited wishes. Done. Now we can favrang. Now we're good, right? Now that I have unlimited wishes, good. Now the list comes out. Good health, right? All of the other blessings that we need. The first thing is unlimited wishes. But that's what Hashem gave Avram. Hashem gave Avram unlimited blessings. Whatever you bless will be blessed. Not 3 blessings, not 3 wishes, unlimited. Who does Avram bequeath this power to? Yitzchak. Not Yishmael, not Keturah, Hagar's other kids, Zimran, Yaksha, Midyan, etc. Not all these, not those sides of the family, or that side of the family. Only Yitzchak. Let's continue. What did Avram give to the other side of the family? And to the sons of Avram's concubines, Avram gave gifts. And he sent them away from his son Isaac, just like, as we mentioned Wednesday night, just like Sarah had done when she sent Ishmael and Hagar away, so as not to be a negative influence. Avram sends away all these other children and grandchildren away from his son Isaac, while Avram was still alive. In other words, it was Avram's way. The others. It says, as my internet is unstable, can you guys, am I cutting
You came out in and out a bit. You were coming in and out a bit.
Right.
I think you're back. I think it's okay now. Oh, unless he disappeared.
No, I don't see him anymore.
Is it clear? Is it okay now? All right. Good. No, I'm here.
We
here.
don't
No,
see
see
you.
me?
no,
No.
still,
You don't see me?
no,
Hold
we
on.
don't see you.
There you are.
Now we see you.
Good stuff. I'm back. By the way, like the moon, I never went anywhere. I never went anywhere. It's just, one of these things. Okay, back inside. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully we won't have more glitches.
I found.
Okay, so he sends.
Oh.
Huh?
I was
You
just going to say, Yas is the town in Australia where there are a lot of llamas.
Ah, yes. 3 S's.
Two, I think. I don't know.
What?
I think
My
it's the same.
friends.
Yeah, there.
3 S.
Oh,
3
three
S's.
S's?
And what?
I feel like it's like a slang for something.
Like
but
Yas y'all. It's really y'all.
I know, like yes.
But I went
don't
to
know.
I went to Duncan Hines and wanted to see if they had a mold for a llama in the cake mix, but no. So why are they calling it the llama cake?
signature llama cake. Look at this.
They should have a mold. You know what I'm saying?
I know. Look at this cupcakes.
That they have the decoration instructions for how to
Unbelievable.
do
If you can't trust Duncan Hines, who can you trust?
right.
Seriously, what kind of world do we live in when llama cake doesn't come with a mold or you can't even buy the accessory?
Right.
What do we have to go to Amazon and figure this
Right.
out? Come on, this is amateur hour. All right, let's get back inside. All right, so here we go. So Avram, like Sarah, sends away the others. He sends them eastward to the land of the east. Very dramatic. Eastward, if you want to look in the Hebrew, Kedma al Eretz Kedem. Kedma means eastward to the land of Kedem, not the grape juice. Kedem means east. Let's continue. All right, now the Torah wraps it up. And these are the days, the years of Avram's life that he lived. So you know what's going to happen now. We're going to read about his passing. So the Torah summarizes how long did he live? 100 years and 70 years and 5 years. Not 175 years, but 100 years, 70 years, and 5 years. Why does the Torah split up each segment by saying the word years? So Rashi explains, when he was 100 years old, he was as one who was 70 years old. And when he was 70 years old, he was as one who was 5 years old without sin. In other words, his 100 was like his 70 was like his 5. He was pure of sin. He was a righteous person. So this is like the Torah almost eulogizing Avram in a subtle fashion when it counts the years of his life.
With Sarah, they did 120 and 7.
100 years, 20 years, and exactly the same idea for both Sarah and now Avram, exactly. And verse 8, Avram expired and died in a good old age. That's a really beautiful phrase. B'seva tova. B'seva tova, in good old age. Old and satisfied. Look, let's talk about a blessing of a full life. A good old age, old and satisfied. Zakin v'saveya. That's beautiful, beautiful blessing. Lived a full life. And he was gathered to his people, which is a euphemism for returning to the earth from whence people come. And Isaac and Yishmael, his sons, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, that same cave that he bought for his wife, in the field that we read about at the beginning of this week, in the field of Ephron, the son of Tzohar, the Hittite, which faces Mamre. Tzohar, the Hittite, which faces Mamre. His children, Isaac and Ishmael, buried him in that same cave next to our matriarch, Sarah, his wife. The field that Avram had bought from the sons of Chet, there Avram and his wife Sarah were buried. So the Torah clearly says Avram is buried next to her. Now it came to pass after Avram's death that God blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac dwelt near Be'er Lachai Roi. Okay, so this is the passing and the end of the story in the Torah of Avram. Of course, we continue the legacy, but his personal story is concluded here. I do want to mention something that's very, very important. Who buried Avram? It says Yitzchak and Yishmael. Isaac and Ishmael buried him. Who's mentioned first? Isaac, even though Ishmael was 13 years older than his brother, than his younger half brother. Ishmael was older, Isaac was younger. Isaac is mentioned first. And the commentaries say that even here, that at this point, Ishmael already had acknowledged that Isaac should be the one who's first to be mentioned and first to bury their dad. This is what Rashi says, quoting the Talmud. Here we go. From here, we deduce the fact that it says first Isaac and then Ishmael. From here, we may deduce that Ishmael repented. He did tshuva and let Isaac go before him. And that is the meaning of a good old age, which is stated regarding Abraham above 15:15. In other words, what does it mean that he lit? Well, good old age was right here. I don't know why 15:15. It's literally right here, good old age. What does it mean? Seva tova, he passed away in a good old age. It means he had nachas from his kids. They weren't fighting anymore. Are you with me on what I'm saying? He had nachas from his kids. His kid Ishmael did tshuva. He repented. And he recognized that Yitzchak was going to be the one to carry the legacy, and he was okay with that. This is the ultimate blessing and why Avram passes away, b'seva tova, in good old age, with happiness, with a smile, because his son, the family is complete, the family is whole. One of the greatest pains for a parent is when the family is not whole, when there's infighting, when there's drama, when there's negativity amongst the children, between the siblings. That is not, it doesn't give the parent nachas, whether in their lifetime or whether after the lifetime, whether when they're strong and healthy or whether they're on their deathbed. It's not a good feeling for a parent to see kids fighting. And so as long as Yishmael, not that Yitzchak was fighting with Yishmael, but he was a negative influence. He had to send them away. He was involved, we mentioned before, in they saw mitzachek, which means adultery and idolatry and murder. Ishmael was involved in all sorts of negative things, and that's why it was necessary to send them away. But ultimately, the Torah tells us, and the Torah alludes to it, and our sages tell us that Ishmael did tshuva. He repented. He became a righteous person, and he reconciled with his brother. And he said, "You know what? I'm 13 years older, but you got the leg. You got the chain is going through you." So he let Yitzchak, his younger brother, at 13 years, go first in the burial procession or in the burial arrangements. That's a very special thing, and that's why Avram passed away b'seva tova, in good old age, in a positive disposition. Ray.
Here it says something interesting. It says, these are the sons of Ishmael. And then it says that their names were names of fortified cities. And these are the names of their open cities and by their strongholds, whether or not they took up residence in open cities. What does that mean? And who is Radak? R-A-D-A-K. Who is that?
Radak is a biblical commentary.
Well, that's what it says. Yeah.
And he says he named them after the cities.
The names he gave them are the names of, fortified cities. It says whether or not they took up residence in those cities or not.
Right. So basically, it's not that the kids were named after the cities. The cities were named after the kids. It's kind of like Pittsburgh is named after Sir William Pitts. I'm joking about that. No, that's a joke. That was fake. It's fake news, guys. Come on, seriously. No, but you have sometimes a city that's named after a person, right? Like Washington, for example. Yeah, Washington. Can we confirm it's named after George Washington? Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. What does anyone know this? Washington, D.C. Are we sure about this?
It must be.
Got it right. I mean, Sarah's a great. Listen, we got two already. We're good. Look, it's got to be Washington D.C., the capital, and the first president, George Washington. Like the odds are in our favor to say it's named that. So what I'm saying is that's the meaning of this. People had kids, and they named cities after their kids, after these leaders, after these these strong people, and they sort of fortified cities.
You are correct about
whether George Washington.
You're correct. You're correct.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Good. I like it. Honestly, I get my information.
Joking and not.
I get my information from the llama. That was a joke. I gotta jump in on that. So here we go. So the llama told me we have a thing going on over here. The llama says, yes, this is what happened.
No, he doesn't say yes, he says yes.
Yes. This is what happens. That the people named the cities after the people. They were named after people. Whether or not the people lived, there's another question. So did George Washington have a home in Georgetown. You ever wonder why it's called Georgetown? In Washington, there's a place called Georgetown.
Right. Oh, you froze again.
What else
No,
do you need? A statue? Come on, am I frozen or am I?
Georgetown might be King George.
In America?
Yeah,
I
I
won't
just,
tell-
Are you joking?
no.
I won't.
Oh.
Donna, I won't tell if you won't tell. Here
Okay.
you go. Let's keep it a secret. Listen, let's pretend it's George Washington.
Okay.
Like the obvious
Yeah.
thing. Whether it is or
Froze
not,
again.
the llama says yeah. So llamas on the llama on the cake. Did I freeze again? Can you guys see me?
You're back.
Now we
frozen?
do. You going in
You're
and
back.
I'm back and better than ever. The good news is all you guys missed, we're back. We're-
Okay.
We can't, you're
if
frozen. You're
one
frozen.
llama
He goes in and out
is
from
Yeah.
frozen
the
to
Dalai Lama.
frost.
The three llama.
You're
guys
frozen.
Rabbi,
Uh-oh.
are you on your cell phone?
Are we on the Fritz?
You're slowly back. I think the connection there is not that great, the
Hold on.
Wi-Fi, right?
Are you
That
on your
doesn't seem
cell
to be.
phone? Oops.
I think it's the connection at the school, the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but there's a
Oh, you're-
workaround.
Rabbi, you have to unmute. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Are you on
You
your
guys see
cell
that
phone
now?
or are you on your
No.
laptop?
Laptop. The Wi-Fi is
Well,
not great here.
You could do a workaround. You could do your visual
Oh,
on your cell phone. That's
that from-
mobile.
I've tried that. It creates an echo. Last time I tried that, it created
No,
an echo.
you have to not join with audio. You can't have two audios in the same room.
All right, I think we'll muster through. We'll push our way through this. So, guys, if a 1L llama is the Dalai Lama and a 2L llama is the animal llama, what's a 3L llama?
Hunkin cake.
No,
No.
3L llama is a really big fire.
Yeah.
3L llama. All right, guys, come on.
I don't
3L
know when
llama,
to believe him and not.
a llama, alarmer, 3L llama. Okay. Oh, yes, it was as bad as advertised. Okay, now let's get back in. So let's do reading number 7. Now that we learned about the offspring and what happens next, let's get back inside to number 7. Shvi, this is tomorrow's reading. This is how we conclude the Torah reading. Now, Genesis chapter 25, verse 12. Thumbs up if you can still hear me. Yes? Amazing. All right. Good. Now, these are the generations of Ishmael, the son of Avram. Now that we know that Ishmael did Shuvah, he repented, a good guy. So what's with his family? Let's talk about his family. These are the generations of Ishmael, the son of Avram, whom Hagar the Egyptian, the maidservant of Sarah, bore to Avram. Yeah, that's the family tree. And these are the names of the sons of Ishmael by their names. According to their births, the firstborn of Ishmael was Nivayot, and Kedar, and Adbeel, and Mibsam. These are the people. Yes? Still with me? Thumbs up? Yes? Okay, good. And Mishma, and Duma, and Massa, and Hadad, and Tema, and Yitur, and Nafish, and Kedma. Wow, a lot of sons. How many sons does he have? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Huh. Look at this.
12 tribes.
Yep. Not insignificant. In other words, it's not meaningless, it's meaningful. He had 12 sons. These are like the 12 other princes, if you will, of the line of Ishmael that ultimately becomes a different people, the father of other nations. But this is 12 tribes, if you will, of Ishmael.
Are they
Let's
still
continue.
Hebrew names, Rabbi? Are all these still Hebrew?
I don't know. No. Sorry. If you're asking if these names are used today, no.
No. I meant at the time. Yeah, at the.
I don't know. So that's what I thought you were asking originally, and then I thought maybe something else. But yeah, if that's what you're asking, I have no idea. I don't know if they were like Hebrew names, Jewish names, or just local names, but Hebrew pronunciation, I have no idea.
I mean, because it's interesting, of course, we're just, I mean, how it evolved, after the 12 tribes, how things evolved from them.
We understand that Ishmael is the father of the Arab nations and the father of Islam.
Yes.
But of course, Islam, and that emerges much, much later. So ultimately, I guess it has to be somehow the origins of the Arabs. So how does it work exactly? How does that family tree continue to evolve? I don't have those details. I'm sure it's written up somewhere, but it's interesting that we find 12 tribes, 12 sons,
Princes.
just like Jacob will have 12 sons. It's just, the symmetry is uncanny. All right, so these are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names in their open cities and in their walled cities, 12 princes to their nation. There you go, 12 princes. We didn't have to do the count. The Torah does the count. Why was I wasting time doing the math? There you go, 12 princes to their nations. All right, that's it. So now we know about Ishmael and that side of the family. Good. Now he passes away, and let's read about his passing. And these are the years of the life of Ishmael. How long did he live? 100 years and 30 years and 7 years. The same number, the same counting sequence. The 100 years, the 30 years, and the 7 years. And he expired and died and was gathered to his people. And all of these, I have to tell you, the fact that it splits up years, the fact that it says he expired and died and was gathered to his people, all of these are expressions that Torah only uses with regards to righteous people. This is another indication that he passed away as a righteous person. Even if his kids weren't Jewish and didn't go in a Jewish and went in a completely different path, he himself did teshuvah. He came back to a good place, and that's how he passed away. And his family, dwelt from Havilah to Shur, which borders on Egypt, going toward Ashur. Before all his brothers he dwelt. So you see already where they're living toward Egypt. Again, this is the father of the Arab nations. So this is the story. Let me just quickly see if there's a Rashi that I want to mention. Nope, that's it. I mean, there's some important Rashis there, but nothing that I want to get inside right now. Okay, so this ends the Torah portion. Let me stop sharing for a moment and let's schmooze. This formally concludes the Torah portion, but not the Haftorah. We're still going to do the Haftorah, and boy, is it a story. It's a very important story, and also ties in beautifully with this Torah portion, which I'll explain soon. But first, let's close it out. So what we had this week, as I mentioned Wednesday night, are three major narratives. The passing, purchase of a plot, and burial of Sarah. The passing of Sarah, purchase of her burial plot, and her being laid to rest. It's one story. Finding a wife for Yitzchak is story number 2. And Avram remarrying and having kids and Yishmael's, and all that stuff is the last part of the Torah portion. The moral of the story is, at least what we read today, is that notwithstanding the fact that Avram had other kids, that Yishmael had done tshuva, he had 12 sons of his own. They were mighty and powerful and created cities and walled cities and open cities. Despite all of that, the Torah tells us clearly that Avram gave his special blessing to Yitzchak. And what's the blessing? To bless others, but that's really the Jewish blessing, right? That's the one when God said to Avram, Lech lecha, go, and I'll give you the blessings, and this is going to be your thing, and we have this covenant thing going between us. That's the blessing that Abraham gives to Isaac. So the Torah is very clear. The Bible, this is straight up Bible. The Bible tells us that the lineage is traced from Abraham to Isaac. I mean, I haven't read a King James edition of it or another version of it, but I can't imagine there's any other way to translate that Avram gave everything that he had to Isaac. It's what it is. I'm just emphasizing this to say that this is obviously the Jewish claim about the legacy of Avram, where it goes and how it transmits. And then Yitzchak, for his part, will give it specifically to Yaakov, to Jacob, and not to Ishmael. And that's, of course, the story with the blessings, which is its own parsha, its own section, which we'll get to. All right, so that closes it out today for the Torah reading. Now let's jump to the Haftorah. As I mentioned, the major stories of this week's Torah portion, a lot has to do with legacy. A A lot has to do with the legacy. Avram trying to ensure that what he lived for, what he built, would have legs to carry on after his wife's passing, after his passing ultimately. And that's why he endeavors so strongly to make sure that Yitzchak gets married so that he can continue the legacy forward. Are you with me on that? I feel like maybe I should clarify. Let me clarify quickly. And I want to show you a verse that we read a few days ago. Okay, so bear with me. Genesis chapter 24, verse 1. This was, by the way, in the second reading. So we did this on, I guess, Monday. It says, and Abram was old, advanced in his days, and the Lord had blessed Abram with everything. So he says to his servant, make a promise and make sure you find and find a wife for my son. But again, the introduction is Abram was old, advanced in days, which means that as he's getting older, as Avram is getting older, he's thinking, okay, I have a son, but my son's not married. And if we want this to continue beyond just my son, if I want this to continue to the next generation, after the next generation, in other words, generation 3, we gotta get Yitzchak married. We gotta make this happen. We gotta get the wheels turning. So what we see here is Avram is concerned with legacy or with continuity. The story that we're going to read in the Haftorah, this is my introduction. The story that we're going to read in the Haftorah is King David. Listen to this. King David endeavoring to make sure that his monarchy has a continuation. Are you with me on this? It's how he ensures that his kingdom, his sovereignty is going to continue into the next generation and beyond. That's what King David does. So the similarity between the Torah story and the Haftorah story is it's about parents seeking not longevity, but seeking longevity to their mission, seeking perpetuity, seeking a continuation to their to what they lived for and what they were all about. All right, let's read it inside. It's a very interesting story. It comes from the book of Kings. It's actually the opening verses from the book of Kings 1. So it's all right. So this is book of Malachim, and this is it. This is the opening. I'm going to share my screen. Let's look at it together. Remember what it said about Abraham? Abraham was old and came into his days. And King David was old. He came into his old age. Yeah. Like very similar. This Vamelech David Zakein Baba Yamim, that phrase Zakein Baba Yamim, he was old and came with his days. That's the identical phrase that it uses with Abraham that I just showed you in that verse. Chapter 24, verse 1 of book of Genesis. So Kings chapter 1, verse 1 says the same thing about King David. King David was old, he came into his old age, which means that's the beginning of somebody who's looking to make sure this is going to have continuity. So, and they covered him with clothes, but he was not warmed. I mean, physically, he was old and cold. Yeah. You know this sometimes with elderly individuals, they're very cold. And it's hard to stay warm. And his servant said to him, they had a strategy. Listen to this. Listen, it's not something that you and I would, whatever, but look. And his servant said to him, let them seek for my lord, the king, a young girl, a virgin. And she shall stand before the king, and she shall be to him a warmer. And she shall lie in your lap, and it shall be warm for my lord the king. That was the advice that the servants came up with. Let's find a young girl and let her be in physical proximity to the king. Not necessarily suggesting anything more than that, but just that itself would warm up the king on a few different levels, and that will be beneficial to the king's health. Verse 3, and they sought a beautiful young girl throughout the borders of Israel. And who did they find? They found this young girl whose name was Avishag the Shunamitess. Avishag the Shunamitess, and brought her to the king. And this young girl was very beautiful, and she was a warmer to the king. And she ministered to him, but the king did not. Oh, it says right here. I'm sorry for theorizing. It says clearly the king did not know her, and of course, know her. Yada'a is a euphemism for intimacy. So it didn't go beyond that. There was some sort of physical proximity, and she helped the king, and it was beneficial to the king's health, but nothing went beyond that. All right, let's continue this story. And Adoniyahu, the son of Chagit, exalted himself, saying, I will be king. So let me explain what's going on here. David is the king, but David's old. And David's, at this point, he's not just old, he's like really old to the point that he's physically just not, if he's like, so to the point that they need a young woman to be like, if that's where it's going, he's very old and kind of, let's just say, out of things. So now there's a bit of a vacuum. And so this guy, Adoniyahu, the son of Chagit, says, I'm going to be king. Who does he say that to? He doesn't say it to King David. He says it to himself. But now he starts gathering his followers. And he made for himself chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. So here you have a guy. Sorry?
What does that mean, 50 men to run before him?
You know, like a king would have a chariot and then a royal procession of like, you know, like in a parade, you have like people in front of the parade before the big floats. So like when you had kings and queens, when you had royalty, there would be people that ran before, you know, the runners before the king and the queen to announce or whatever it is.
Oh.
The point is he had chevra with him. He wasn't just the guy that says, hey, I'm the king, vote for me. This was a guy who put together the appearance of royalty already. He got himself a chariot, he got himself horsemen, he got himself 50 people. He got himself a crowd of followers to already create that momentum. You see what's going on here? This guy feels like there's a bit of a space that he can now slip into. That's his strategy. Okay. Okay, here we go. And his father had not angered him all his days, saying, why have you done so? And he too was of very handsome appearance, and she bore him after Avshalom.
Absolutely.
So what's going on here is the following. Let's see if we can have a Rashi. See if we have a Rashi here. Look at this. That is to say that his mother reared him in the same spoiled manner that Avshalom's mother reared him. So I guess, yeah, what does it mean to, look. His father had not angered him. What does that mean, Rashi says? His father never angered him. This episode teaches you that he who refrains from rebuking his child brings him to his death. In other words, if you don't discipline, then you end up
Spoiled child.
So that's what's going on here. That's when his father had not angered him. His father had never rebuked him and never, again, not that a parent should get angry at a child. I want to modify this a bit, but no discipline is not good. And he was of a handsome appearance. So Avshalom, about whom is written, and as Avshalom there was none so handsome, this caused them, both of them, Avshalom and Adoniyahu, to be proud. Basically, they were both handsome. And what we're reading about the story of Adoniyahu or Adoniyah, and he was proud, he was spoiled, he was prideful, and this, of course, is going to lead to him thinking he can do things that he just simply is not allowed to do, which is like take over the throne of David. So, and he Adoniyahu conferred with Yoav, the son of Tzeruiah, and with Aviasar, the priest, and they helped by following after Adoniyahu. So he got now followers. He got now people that were in with David. He got them to come over to his side. Are you with me on this? He got people that had been loyal to David to now align with him in his attempt to take over the throne. And Sadok the priest and Vinayahu, the son of Yehoyada, and Natan the prophet, and Shimi and Rei, and the mighty men who were with David were not with Adoniyahu. So these people, these righteous people, did not align with Adoniyahu. These people did. Verse 7, people did. Verse 8 is telling us the people that were of influence that rejected this young upstart, this Adoniyahu guy. Okay, and Adoniyahu slew sheep and oxen and fatlings by the stone of Zochelet which is beside Ein Rogel. And he called all his brothers, the king's sons, and all the men of Judah, the king's servants. By the way, Adoniah was one of David's sons. I forgot to mention that. Adoniah, this upstart, was one of David's sons. David had sons from a few different wives, and this is one of his sons who now is making himself, we would say in Yiddish, a big macher, like a big shot. And Natan the prophet and Benyamin, the mighty men, and his brother Solomon, he did not call. So he called these guys that he felt would be loyal to him, but the people that he knew would not be loyal to him, including Natan the prophet and others, and of course Solomon. Okay, Solomon, his brother or half brother, Solomon, right? Solomon. We know the story of Solomon becomes king next, but this is how that happens. Adoniah wants to become the king, but these he does not call because he's trying to just make an end around here. And Natan the prophet said to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, saying, "You have surely heard that Adoniah, the son of Chagit," again another wife, has reigned, and our Lord David did not know it. In other words, have you heard? Okay, so I hope that I just want to be as clear as possible. David had multiple wives and multiple children from those multiple wives. From Bathsheba, he had Shlomo, Solomon. From this woman Chagit, he had Adoniah. So the prophet tells Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, do you hear that this guy Adoniah, one of David's other sons, is calling himself the king, and he's acting like king, and he's assuming the throne almost, and David has no idea what's going on. And now, come, I shall count the prophet. He was a righteous spiritual prophet, spoke with God. And now says the prophet to her, come and I shall counsel you with advice, and you shall save your life and the life of your son Solomon, because he's about to get ramshackled and overrun here and end around it. Yeah, go and come to King David. The prophet Natan tells David's wife, Solomon's mother, Bathsheba, to go to King David, and you shall say to him, surely you, my lord the king, did swear to your maid, in other words, me, saying that Solomon your son will reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne. Now, why does Adoniah reign? So the prophet says to the mother, go to your husband David and say to him, didn't you promise me that our kid Solomon will be the next king? So why does Adoniah sit on your throne? You with me? What's going on here? David's out of the picture almost. David's like, he's with he's trying to stay warm, right? He's not well. He's not around. Adoniah is already calling himself king, running with, and he has followers here. And this is dangerous. It's not the way it's supposed to be. So the prophet goes to the wife, the mother of Solomon, says to go to your husband and say to him, what's going on? Behold, you are talking there with the king, and I shall come in after you. So here's the strategy. You'll say this to David, King David, and then the prophet Natan says, and then I shall come in right after you, and I shall complete your words. In other words, I'm going to corroborate your words by saying, this is crazy what's going on. Are you with me on the plan? So now you have not just one person complaining, or if you will, bring it to David's attention. You're going to have two people. You're going to have the wife and the prophet at the same time, simultaneously, as if it's not coordinated, but saying, oh my gosh, what's going on? Oh my gosh, what's going on? And that's going to get David, hopefully on to take action here and to end this. So
Rabbi, excuse me. Is there any confusion? Do sometimes people want proof that the prophet was really a prophet? I mean,
Natan was a real deal. Natan Hanavi was a real deal. He's the one that chastised David after David was with Bathsheba, and that's a story unto itself. But no, Natan Hanavi was, he approved himself. He was like legit. He was a prophet, like we know Samuel and Elijah and Elisha. Natan, he was a real deal. But Natan says, look, sometimes on the ground, you got to make it happen. This is what's going to happen. You're going to go in and tell David what's going on with this succession of the throne. And then I'm going to come in and corroborate, and we're going to make this happen. So Bathsheba came into the king, into the chamber. And the king, again, was very old. And Avishag, the Shunammite, ministered to the king. So imagine the scene. She comes in and he's just like, he's older, and this young girl is there to keep him warm and whatever it is. So he's clearly not paying attention to what's going on. And Bathsheba bowed her head and prostrated herself unto the king. And the king said, what is your wish? Why are you here? What would you like? And she said to him, my lord, you swore by the Lord your God to your maid, to me, saying that Solomon, your son, shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne. In other words, you promised me that our child that we had together, Solomon, would be the successor to the throne. And now she says to her husband David, behold, Adoniah has reigned. And now, my lord, the king, you did not know. In other words, you're not even aware of this, but Adoniah is sitting on the throne. And he has slain oxen and fatlings and sheep in abundance. And he called all I don't know if it was a sacrifice or a sign of power or whatever it was. And all the king's sons, then Aviatar the priest, and Yoab the general of the army. He's aligning all these things with him. And he's doing acts of sovereignty. But Solomon, your servant, he did not call. Solomon's being cut out of this. What's going on? And you, my lord the king, the eyes, listen to this. Listen to this line. And you, my lord the king, she says, the eyes of all Israel are upon you. Everyone's watching and waiting. What are you going to do about this? That you should tell them who shall sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Everyone's waiting. What do you decide? You told me privately that it's going to be my son Solomon, but now you're not paying attention. This guy's there. He's creating a massive alliance for himself. So now the question is, King David, what do you say? What do you say? No. What's the verdict? And otherwise, when my lord the king shall sleep with his fathers, and I and my son Solomon shall be considered offenders. In other words, otherwise, if you don't say anything, then when my lord the king shall sleep with his fathers, in other words, when you will pass away, I and my son Solomon shall be considered offenders. In other words, we'll be outcasts, we'll be outsiders. You with me on this? So Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, hears about this from Natan the priest. Let's create a strategy. You go into the king and plead your case, and she does. Very convincingly, I may add. She says to him, here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. Here's what Adoniah is doing. He's already sitting on the throne on some level. He's making an alliance and creating a following. And you promise me, and everyone's looking at you. What are you going to say? And if you do nothing, then we are cut out, me and my son. And behold, she was still speaking with the king, right? Remember the plan? The prophet's going to come in, barging in with the same story. So she was still speaking with the king, and Natan the prophet came. He was waiting for his cue. He jumps in. And they told the king, saying, behold, Natan the prophet. In other words, they obviously had to tell him who was here. So you understand how old he was. So they said, Natan the prophet is here. And he came in before the king, or maybe he was outside. So okay, so maybe he was outside. So they told him that he's here to see you, and they let him in. And he came before the king, and he prostrated himself unto the king upon his face to the ground. So now Natan the prophet is bowing down to the king. And Natan said, my lord the king, did you say, hold on, he says, did you say Adoniah shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne? Is that what you, did you, Natan, like as if he's getting a clarification from the king. He's like, just tell me, did you ask Adoniah to sit on the throne? Did you proclaim him to be the king? Why do I ask this? For he has gone down this day, and he has slain oxen and fatlings and sheep in abundance. And he called all the king's sons and the officers of the army and Aviatar the priest. And behold, they eat and drink before him. And they said, long live King Adoniah. I'm sorry. Why did they slay all the animals? To create a feast, a coronation party, a new king party. That's what was going on. And they're now eating and drinking, and they're saying l'chaim, and long live King Adoniah. Is this David HaMelech? Is this what you wanted? Just clarify. Is this your plan? And me, even me, your servant, and Sadok the priest, and Midyan the son of Yodah, and Solomon, your servant, he did not call. He's cutting out those that he feels would be a threat and creating this alliance on his own. So if this matter stems from my lord the king, I wonder that you have not informed your servant who should sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. In other words, if this is what you want, then I'm wondering how come you never mentioned this? We never heard anything about this Adoniah reigning after you. Why haven't we heard anything? What is your wish? That's the question. So it's kind of like good cop back. It's not good cop back up. It's like wife, prophet. It's different. She's pleading on behalf of her and her son. He's saying on behalf of the nation, on behalf of like what's right and wrong. There's like a lot of angles, but they're really, they're really putting the squeeze now on David to make a decision. And King David answered and said, call Bathsheba to me. And she came before the king and stood before the king. And he swore, listen to this. And he swore and said, I swear, as God lives, who redeemed my soul from all distress. In other words, as God lives, the same God that saved me from all my tsaras, we called Sarah, from all my troubles. Indeed, as I swore to you by the Lord of Israel, saying, surely Solomon, your son, shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne in my stead. Surely so will I do this day. Just like I promised you then, I reiterate my promise today, that it's Solomon who shall reign after me. And Bathsheba bowed her face to the earth, and she prostrated herself to the king and said, Yechi Adoni Hamelech David Leolam, let my Lord King David live forever. David Melech Yisrael Chai Vekayam. She said, let King David live forever. Out of gratitude and thankfulness for affirming and confirming that her son Solomon would be the one that ought to sit on the throne. Ultimately, that's how the story plays out. Adoniah is disposed of, and Solomon takes the throne. But this is a story of succession. It's a dramatic story of succession, a story of how the throne succeeds after David, with the controversy: who shall take the throne? Adoniah, Solomon. And in a similar way, we can say we have the same theme in this week's Torah portion. Abraham is thinking about successorship, thinking about who's going to take over. Yitzchak, he needs a family. What about Ishmael? Ishmael himself concedes ultimately to Yitzchak, as I mentioned at the end of the Torah portion. Ishmael does tshuva and says, yes, you're the one. The line is going to go through you. But we see this idea of successorship happening in this week's Torah portion. Make sense?
Right.
Good.
Yes. Rabbi,
Yes.
whose head rolls into the cave of the Machpelah? Is that Esau?
Esav. Yes, not Ishmael. Esav tried to block the funeral of Jacob, his twin brother. Ishmael, by the funeral, was respectful and was buried as a righteous person. So he was not beheaded. That was not him. That was next generation down.
Oh.
Yitzchak's two kids, Jacob and Esau, that was that drama.
Oh.
So Ishmael passed away at Tzaddik. So what's the moral of the story? Number one, it's good to have clarity as to what happens next in general. It's good to have clarity, right? It's a good strategy to have clarity. And number two, we see that as in these stories, the right answer prevails. Okay, so what's the message? What's the inspiration for the Shabbos? Based on the Haftorah, so we have to fight for what's right. Even if someone else is making a lot of noise, we got to fight and stand up for what's right. What was right was that he wanted Solomon to succeed the throne. It wasn't right to stay quiet just because Adoniah was making a lot of noise and taking the bull by the horn, so to speak. We got to step in and make sure that what's right actually takes place. All right, my friends, I want to wish you a good Shabbos, an inspiring Shabbos, a Shabbos filled with light, love, joy, and happiness, and only positivity. All right, don't forget, Shabbat candle lighting is 18 minutes before sunset. Check your local listings for the time. And let me find the time for you in Atlanta. The Atlanta local time for candle lighting, at least 3:06, is 5. No. Nope, that's incorrect. 6:29. Is that correct? That's what mine says. 6:29. Could be. I thought it would be earlier, but maybe 6:29. Or check your local listings to confirm that information. All right. I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. Charna, Donna, Ray, Sarah, Sandrine. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Shabbat
See you
Shalom.
Sunday, please God. Kabbalah and coffee. Take care, everybody.
Bye.